Under a vast, menacing sky, I arrived in the desolate Australian outback. The sweltering sun igniting a sense of dread and unease within me. My new position as a National Parks and Wildlife Officer had brought me to this forsaken land, a stark contrast to the bustling city I'd left behind. I had been tasked with cataloguing the obscure flora and fauna of the region, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been drawn here by a darker purpose. I established my camp near an isolated Aboriginal community at the base of the foreboding Uluru, its crimson surface hinting at ancient, untold secrets. The locals, an enigmatic people, received me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As the sun set, casting eerie shadows upon the landscape, they invited me to join their nightly gatherings around the fire. It was there that I first heard the sinister tales of the Tall Ones. The elders spoke in hushed whispers, sharing macabre stories of the Tall Ones, these otherworldly beings that haunted the outback since time immemorial. They described them as elongated, skeletal creatures, their eyes gleaming like the cold light of dying stars. They regarded them with a mix of fear and reverence, convinced that they held sway over the land and all its inhabitants. As I delved deeper into the wilderness, cataloguing the peculiar species that inhabited this forsaken terrain, I could not escape the ominous presence of these Tall Ones. The winds seemed to murmur their names, while the twisted shadows cast by gnarled trees appeared to take on their grotesque forms. I was consumed by an unnerving fascination, questioning whether these beings were merely the stuff of legend or something far more terrifying. One fateful day, I stumbled upon a hidden oasis, a verdant pocket of life surrounded by the desolation of the outback. The air was heavy with the scent of eucalyptus and the distant, disconcerting whispers of unseen creatures. As I knelt by the water's edge, the ground seemed to tremble beneath me, an ominous harbinger of the horrors that awaited. It was then that I saw it, a tall one, its emaciated frame blending seamlessly with the twisted branches of the trees. Its eyes, they were cold, unfeeling. They bore into me as it approached. My heart thundered in my chest, my instincts screaming at me to flee from this unnatural apparition. Yet, I remained rooted to the spot, as if bound by some unseen force. In the days that followed, the Tall One revealed itself to me, sharing with me the ancient, forbidden knowledge that had driven countless others to the brink of madness. Its voice, it was a cacophony of whispers, spoke of a time when its kind had ruled over the outback, their power absolute and uncontested. The elders were right to fear them, for the Tall Ones, they held the keys to secrets beyond the realm of human understanding. As my time in the outback drew to a close, I knew that I would never be able to escape the shadow of the Tall Ones. The terrifying knowledge that these things had imparted to me, it had taken root in my mind, forever altering my perception of reality. I left the outback with a heavy heart, the weight of my newfound knowledge a crushing burden. Upon my return to the city, the memories of my time in the outback, it haunted me. The whispers of the Tall Ones echoing in the darkest corners of my mind. I became obsessed with the secrets they had shared with me, the lines between reality and nightmare blurring with each passing day. The forbidden knowledge that had been entrusted to me, it gnawed at my sanity, leading me down a dark and treacherous path. I sought solace in the pages of forbidden documents, seeking to uncover the true nature of the Tall Ones and their place within the tapestry of our world. Each new revelation only served to fuel my obsession, the labyrinth of mysteries of the Tall Ones refusing to relinquish their grip on my mind. As my world spiraled into chaos, I realized that my time in the outback, it had not been by chance. I had been chosen, drawn to that desolate land by an insidious force that had seen the potential within me to serve as a vessel for their malevolent will. The Tall Ones had marked me, their dark purpose now inextricably linked with my own. The city, once a symbol of safety and order, now stood as a cruel mockery of my former life. The whispers of the Tall Ones, it grew louder, their eldritch voices weaving a symphony of terror that I could no longer ignore. Desperate to escape their sinister influence, I returned to the outback, hoping to confront the source of my torment, to break free from their relentless grasp. As I stood once more in the shadow of the menacing Uluru, the Tall Ones emerged from their hidden sanctuaries, their numbers beyond count. Their eyes burned with an otherworldly hunger, their alien forms a living testament to the ancient horrors that had ruled this land long before the dawn of mankind. I gazed upon them, my heart filled with a paralyzing mix of awe and terror. In that moment, I understood the truth of their existence, the eternal cycle of fear and power that sustained them. I knew that I had been chosen not as a victim, but as a herald of their return, a vessel through which their dark influence would once again spread across the land. As the whispers of the Tall Ones enveloped me, their chilling voices weaving a tapestry of unspeakable horror, I surrendered to their will, my sanity a small price to pay for the revelation of their ancient secrets. The outback, once a land of mystery, of beauty, had been forever tainted by my descent into the darkness. The echoes of the Tall One's malevolent whispers eternally etched into the very fabric of its existence. In the end, I became both a guardian and a prisoner, bound to protect the secrets that had consumed me, and forever haunted by the whispering shadows of Uluru.
I'm a biologist, and while I haven't had the opportunity to go on expeditions recently, I've been researching the unique ways it adapts to cities. Recently I've been researching Cryptobopherus tediacantha, are a unique lizard species that was originally thought to be endemic to Western Australia. In light of recent events, it's highly concerning that it isn't actually endemic to Western Australia. Cryptobopherus tediacantha is often confused with its close relative, Cryptobopherus bacanani, or Bacanon snake-eyed skink, a species that is endemic to Western Australia. As the males look identical, the only difference is being behavioural. I'd be hesitant to call them a different species. However, social and slight internal anatomical differences mean they don't ever reproduce. The concerning part about Cryptobopherus tediacantha is it displays large sexual dimorphism, the technical term for when the sexes in a certain species have different physical characteristics, like male peafowl having vivid blue colours where the female counterparts are just shades of brown. I found out about these traits after receiving a concerning call from the university. An unusually large reptilian skeleton was unearthed during renovations at a house on the outskirts of Sydney. The skeleton was dug up and sent to the university for further analysis. Reconstructing the skeleton drew in a greater concern. We were able to determine the skeleton was real and not a hoax. Also, through testing the age, it cannot have died more than 50 years ago. The skeleton upon reconstruction measured to be 15 meters from head to tail, 6 times longer than the largest lizard on the planet, the Komodo dragon, and about the same length as a Rapiosaurus, which is an actual prehistoric dinosaur. How it got in the yard unnoticed is unknown. I did a little digging into what this skeleton could be, and from genetic analysis, it is in fact a specimen of Creepypasta tediacantha, even though they can only grow to 5 centimeters. From my current research at the time, I was able to determine that the only presently studied members were males, though scientific curiosity sent me after a female. After several failed months of searching, we finally found one. It had entered a small town just southwest of Sydney. I got a call regarding a lizard that was even larger than the skeleton we found, measuring approximately 20 meters, which is approaching absurd lengths, about the same length as Australotitan cooperensis, which is Australia's largest dinosaur as of 2021. So it is concerning that dinosaurs are now walking through our towns, but also the lack of precedent indicates both a small number of females and a change in behavior. It was originally quite docile, but after we got there it rampaged. It crushed dozens of houses within 10 minutes. The death toll was unfortunate. We managed to subdue it, but only after enough sedatives to knock out 50 elephants and put a tracker on it. This thing was so powerful that all my research and its very existence was then made so classified that typing this is considered treason of the highest order. And I'm only typing it because the new information has come to light that puts millions in danger. From then on it went deep underground, traveling kilometers. Then it stopped. We followed it into the cave system. It wasn't the smartest idea, but we didn't know what we were in for. We found its nest. A deep cavern 200 meters in a circle, filled wall to wall with small eggs. The eggs did not look like they could support the growth of such large animals, and were most likely for the males. There were hundreds and thousands of them scattered around. We managed to take an egg for further research, and replicated the conditions in lab. Upon hatching, it did not stop eating. It ate an insane amount of food that supported an unusually rapid growth cycle. Within a month it was over 1 meter, and with it 3. It got so large even the zoo could not contain it. We were forced to return it to the cave system. The cave system, which was now held hundreds of thousands of unhatched eggs, and 5 females about the same size as our own. We believe this is a change in the sex ratios from baseline and is non-standard. It is likely that, like many reptiles, temperature drives sex determination. And there have been more females recently due to global rising temperatures. All we currently know is there is essentially a dinosaur nest under Sydney. And because they aren't endemic to WA as we thought, there might be dinosaur nests under any number of cities, just waiting for soaring temperatures to rise out of their caves and run rampant through these cities. Even if 1% of these eggs hatch to be female, Sydney is doomed. So this is my warning. It didn't seem fair this information is classified, but if you live in Sydney, leave. You don't want to be here when they come.
A little background before I begin. I'm around 18 and I live in remote Western Australia. I'm surrounded by thousands of kilometers of farmland and bushland. Forest, basically, if you're not familiar with the term bush. We have a large variety of native wildlife on our farm and in the surrounding bushland. Anyway, onto the story. Every day after work, I walk my 2 border collies through a selected bush track which is roughly 10 k's long. Basically a way to unwind from my shitty job. I have seen creepy things in there before. You know, stuff like dead animals, livestock, cows that have been dumped by farmers and thrown across logs in a creepy fashion. But nothing compared to what I witnessed this particular day. It's important to note here that since we're so rural, there's a lack of people out here. However, I sometimes pass a camper or the odd drug grower. You know, using the remoteness of the bush as an opportunity to grow their marijuana, despite the area being well known to police for drug growth. So, anyway, as I'm walking my dogs late last year, in the middle of summer, I was surprised when my 2 dogs just stopped, began to growl, and the hair on the back of their neck began to stand on end. I thought it may just be a kangaroo or a feral pig, as my younger dog gets quite worked up when they're around. This thought quickly faded when I felt cold and I broke out in goosebumps, despite it still being a hot 37 degrees Celsius at 5:30 in the PM. A couple of seconds after this, the temperature suddenly dropped. I mean, out of nowhere, just dropped. I rounded the corner, and there was a little girl, standing in the middle of the bush trail. The sudden sight of someone being there frightened the shit out of me. This girl was looking in the opposite direction, with her back to me. At first glance, I'd say she's around 7, judging by her height. She had dirty blonde medium-length hair, a plain red shirt, and black shorts. As I was about to laugh to myself about letting a little girl who was probably camping with her parents scare me, the girl turned and looked at me. This was not a normal girl. Her eyes, they were black. Not black as in contact black. They were hollow, a lifeless black. This thing, it opened its mouth and it let out an ear-splitting howl. It turned and ran back into the bush. Needless to say, I hightailed it out of there, dragging my cowering, frightened farm dogs, and I ran for about 6 k's, fueled by nothing but fear, before my adrenaline crashed and my lungs burned, legs ached, and my head spun. After another 2 k's or so, I arrived home, ran inside and locked my dogs and myself in the bedroom, too shit scared to come out to eat dinner. I didn't walk through that bush trail for a month afterwards, but since walking again, I haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. I've been walking in this bush since I was 10 years old, and I've never seen anything like that before. This story is 100% true. You do not have to believe me, but I'm posting this here in hopes of finding out what the hell I saw. Some kind of Australian skinwalker? A native spirit disguised as a little girl, or just some really messed up prank?
This only happened to me a few months ago. I'm a businesswoman in my late 30s, with a lovely family which includes my adoring husband and 2 daughters. My job usually requires me to travel between states once every few weeks. It kind of became a dreadful routine. I hated leaving my family. Plus, all the lonely driving at stupidly tedious hours were a nuisance. So, this one time I was called to a team meeting in South Australia. As per usual, I didn't take a flight there because I hated planes. I never felt comfortable sitting in a giant flying structure that could collapse any moment. I realized that the chances of a plane crash is small, but I just felt a lot safer driving, in my opinion. After staying in South Australia for a week, it was time for me to go home. The last meeting finished late afternoon, and most of my coworkers decided that they would spend the night drinking in Adelaide and stay at a hotel there or something. Me, being the usual antisocial, I decided not to join them. Instead, I packed my luggage and checked out. I began driving home at around 6 p.m. A few hours passed and the highway became deserted. It was just me and the late-night radio talk show now. I had my window rolled down, and the cool breeze was blowing against my face. It was almost midnight, and fatigue started to kick in. But I knew that the nearest motel was a long way away, so I kept driving until something unusual caught my eye. From a distance, I could see a figure standing by the road. I could barely make out whether it was a man or a woman until I drove past him. Since I was going at quite a fast speed, I only had a glimpse of him. I stopped a few hundred meters from where he was standing. I put the handbrake on and put the car into neutral. At this point, I was a little concerned and confused. I just drove past a guy, covered in blood, holding a glowing neon sign. Was he in need of help? Where did he come from? There were no houses nearby, just kilometers of bushland. I decided to unbuckle my seatbelt and got out of the car. I looked to where he was standing, but he wasn't there anymore. Just the long, lonely, stretched road. It must be one of those YouTube pranks, I thought. He was no older than 20 years old. There's probably a crew of his mates hidden somewhere in the bushes with a camera. I got back into the car and began driving again. A few minutes later, I saw something that really put me into shock. I drove past the same boy, covered in blood, holding a neon sign that says 5 km. 5 kilometers. Instead of stopping this time, I kept driving and sped up. What the hell was he doing at the side of the road this far out? How did he get there ahead of me? There were no cars at this hour. What did the sign mean? I began shaking at the thought of this young man. However, I kept on driving and blamed it on my fatigue. I was probably just really tired and just seeing random shit. I kept driving. And every kilometer was the blood-covered boy again, and again, with a new neon sign every time, counting down the kilometers. 4 kilometers. 3 kilometers. 2 kilometers. 1 kilometer. After I passed him holding the 1 kilometer sign, I pulled over. I was shit scared and extremely frustrated. There I was, a grown woman, sitting in my car screaming and crying, slamming my sweaty palms against the steering wheel. I was scared of what would happen if I drove on for another kilometer. I took deep breaths and calmed myself down as best as I could, and drove away from the side of the road. That was when I began seeing him more frequently. It had now come down to every 200 meters. At each encounter, his smile was more evident. He looked at me, right in the eyes as I drove past him, with a smug smile on his face. 400 meters. The inevitable was coming. I didn't know what it was, but I just stepped on the gas and closed my teary eyes and hoped for the best. My eyes jolted open at the sound of a loud crash. My windscreen had a massive crack covered with blood. I had hit something. I stepped on the brake as hard as I could. Shit. I must have hit a kangaroo or something. Oh, that prick. It was a prank all along. He must have had a mate throw a dead kangaroo in front of my car or something. Furious, I quickly unbuckled my seatbelt and stormed out of the car. I left the car running. It was then I realized it was not kangaroo as I approached the end of the skid mark on the road. There was a body there. It was human. It was a male, no older than 20 years old, covered in blood. The same boy I kept seeing. I knelt down next to him and checked for his pulse. I couldn't find it. Then something caught my eye from across the road. It was a bright neon sign. There was the same boy holding it. The sign read, "Thank you."
Many years ago, I got lucky and scored a pretty damn good job on a remote cattle station in Central Oz. And when I say remote, holy crap, I mean really remote. Fair income. It takes a day and a half just to get the mail and a 2-day drive into town. That's how far out I was living. Okay, this cattle station, it's old. By Australian standards anyway. It was built around 1860-something. And the land, well, let's say it's empty of trees, but wild. Maybe over 20-odd thousand acres or more. My job is boundary riding, making sure that the dingo fence is in good nick, as well as the rabbit-proof fence, which runs from Central Australia over the border into Western Queensland. So it's bloody long. My job is to make sure that the fence is secure, plenty of water for the cattle, and no dingoes or those pesky bloody rabbits are destroying the land. The blokes I work with are the local indigenous, and bloody great blokes they are. There is one area of the property that my indigenous mates refuse to go. It's this glorious watering hole. They refuse to go anywhere near it. "Why don't you go down there?" I asked Chris. "Butter," he said, "there's very bad spirits there. No good. Very bad place. Elders warn us not to swim there, or she'll take ya." Who are we talking about?" "Yinapa." "What do you mean, Yinapa?" "Devil girl." That was all he said. I left it at that, but as it would happen, I was to witness this Yinapa, the devil girl. It was roughly about a month back when this strange incident occurred. It was in the low 40s, bloody hot, as we travelled around the fence line, repairing this, shooting that. When it came near 5 o'clock, it was starting to get cooler. I knew we couldn't get back to the station until midday the next day, as the horses needed resting. Chris began to get nervous about something, and then he told me that we were in Yinapa's territory. "We have to be aware, brother. Not good country here. Plenty of tucker though, but not good country." That night, we had a freshly killed kangaroo. We had a yarn about this and that, who's winning the footy and what have you. Then we settled down to sleep. Now, I am not sure to this day if I dreamt this or if it was real, but whatever the hell it was, it scared me to bloody death. I was sleeping in my swag, Chris snoring away, when suddenly the old bladder began to call out to me. So out of my swag I got, groggily I should add, and took a walk to take care of business. It was a stunning night, with the black velvet sky sprinkled with stars, as well as the Milky Way streaking across the sky. If you want to see an amazing night sky, spend a night out in the Australian desert. You're in for an absolute treat. Anyway, there I stood, taking care of business, when she came out of the darkness. I cannot say for sure if she was human. I can't say she wasn't. I have no idea what the hell she was. But she came out at me, on all fours, naked as the day she was born. Something about this thing that stunned me, and then a voice spoke. It was Chris. "Back up slowly, brother. No sudden movement. That's Yennefer. Shh." I did what I was told, and I stood, looking at this girl, creature, thing. Like I said, I have no idea what it was. I stayed there as she made her way back into the darkness. I'll tell you one thing, I did not sleep that night, and we both left very early the next day. I never did go back to that camping spot, and still, I have no idea what the hell Chris and I saw that night.